What is going on, everybody? My name is Alex. You can find me on Twitter at Brock Dynasty. And today we're going to be going through some RB pockets and underdog drafts with the values that I just love. So if you're unfamiliar with Underdog, it's going to be a place that you can do best ball drafts the entire summer. There's no time commitment at all. You're going to draft a huge 18-round lineup that's going to set the best players for you each week. You don't make any waiver moves. You don't make any trades. Essentially just check back in at the end of the year, see how much money you made. They got small field tournaments. They got large field tournaments with millions of dollars in prizes. So really great place to draft during the off season, get a little bit sharp and get prepared for your redraft drafts with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, what have you. So if you're new to Underdog though, you can use code SMASHACCEPT for your first time deposit to get a 50% deposit match up to $250 to start playing and jumping into these drafts here over the next several weeks as training camp ramps up here before the season. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the purpose of this video, which is going to be going through 3 different running back pockets that I found in these Underdog drafts. After doing drafts all summer long, the ADPs have gotten a little bit crazy, especially when comparing it to Sleeper. Just did a Sleeper draft for a tournament here last week, and it's crazy to see the difference in where these different position groups go. And so for Underdog, there's a huge emphasis on receivers. You can start 3 in your lineup and then 1 at flex, so up to 4 each week, whereas running back, it's just 2 that are required for your lineup each week. With that being said, a lot of the receivers are being pushed up the board to where later in your drafts, you're then looking between a Christian Kirk and a Travis Etienne, or you're looking at Alvin Kamara or Curtis Samuel. So it really makes sense to go ahead and target the wide receivers hot, heavy, and early, and then make sure to get the running back values later in your drafts. And these are some great areas where they have consistent guys with proven upside that have the volume that you need to be efficient for your lineups that you can get at a discount because of the receivers being bumped up. So I went through and found 3 of these different areas that are just too good in terms of value, in terms of the comparison of wide receivers going in that range. So the first pocket that we're looking at is going to be in the late 5th, early 6th round. The 3 guys that I'm looking at here and targeting are going to be James Cook, Joe Mixon, and Rachaad White. I like to get at least one of these guys on each of my team as compared to the receivers going in that range. You've got the 2 Chiefs, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Chris Godwin, Rome Odunze. You're essentially deciding between the RB13 or the wide receiver 36, and it really makes sense at this point to go ahead and snag one of your top running backs. So taking a look at James Cook, he's currently ranked on Underdog as the RB13, ADP of the 510. And so taking a look at James Cook, last year he was the RB11 in half PPR, and he had over 1,000 rush yards. And he wasn't someone, especially when coming out of college, that I anticipated to be someone with consistent 1,000+ rush yard upside, but he proved to do it in the Bills offense last year, only competing with Latavius Murray. This year, Lat Murray's gone. He's only going to be competing with Ray Davis, who they drafted earlier this year. He could get more of the goal line work, but at the end of the day, I think James Cook does have the upside to go ahead and return again at this value, be a top 12 guy in half PPR formats. Again, we know that they have the most vacated targets. This is nothing new. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are out of the way. They do bring in Curtis Samuel. They draft Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid could take a step up. But again, that's all in the past game. And I think once Joe Brady took over at the end of last year, heading into this year, they made the run game a lot more of a priority. And because of this, we saw Josh Allen be way more efficient toward the back half of the year than he was in the early part of the year. So I honestly think they're going to lean on the run game once again. James Cook is someone that has a 50+ target upside, at least 40+ catch upside, to where I'm going to be ripping him all day here in the late 5th round. The next guy on this list is going to be Joe Mixon, who is currently the RB14, coming off the board at the 601. And so Joe Mixon was actually the RB5 in half PPR formats last year, and I believe he's now going to a better offense than what we saw last year with Jake Browning for half the year, to where there's less pass catching work, maybe with the receiving weapons of Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. Obviously, there's only one football going around, so I don't think he's going to eat as much in the pass game, but I think he is going to have a lot more goal line work and a lot more scoring opportunities than he did in that Bengals offense last year. We all project for the Texans to be a top 5 scoring offense here in 2024, and I think Joe Mixon as the workhorse. Behind that new O-line, they're getting a lot of their guys back this year healthy, and a Stroud-led offense in year 2 is going to absolutely smash at the early 6th round ADP he currently has. The next guy on this list is going to be Rachaad White, currently the RB15, going off the board at the 603. And Rachaad White is someone who actually shocked me a lot. There was some hype of him during the 2022 draft during that process, but at the end of the day, I didn't think he was ever going to be a guy that could be a 3-down guy. And last year, he proved to be that guy. He was the RB7 last year in half PPR, and it's crazy. He caught 64 out of 70 of his targets last year, so 90% of the balls coming his way, he is reeling in, and he does have, again, that 60-plus catch upside, I believe, this year. And he had 9 total touchdowns last year, which is something to where if he can kind of get similar usage, at least in the receiving game, some of the goal line work still. All they did was bring in Bucky Irving, 5'9", 190. I don't think he's going to take any of that goal line work away, to where I think Rachaad White is definitely going to return at this value. Obviously, the biggest change in this Bucs offense here in 2024 is that their offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, went and took the head coaching job in Carolina now, and they bring in Liam Cohen, who has already said early in the offseason that he's going to be relying on the ground game early and often to go ahead and open up stuff in the receiving game. And that is what you want to hear, especially for a guy going into year 3, has shown the upside here in his first couple years, now going as RB15 off the board at the 603. I love taking him here in 2024 drafts. The next pocket we're going to go over is going to be the biggest one by far, and it spans from the entire 7th to the entire 8th round in these drafts. The guys consist of Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, James Conner, Jaylen Warren, DeAndre Swift, and Raheem Mostert. So I always want to walk away from these drafts with at least 2 of these guys going back to back in the 7th and 8th. You get your receivers early, maybe get the one guy in the late 5th, early 6th, and then stack 2 of these guys to your squad as well. So naming those running backs I just mentioned, the wide receiver equivalents in this range are going to be guys like Keon Coleman, Jameson Williams, Curtis Samuel, and Cortland Sutton. So it's where the receiving tiers really start to drop off, and the running backs are just incredible values. So the first guy, Alvin Kamara, coming off the board as the RB18, ADP of 705. He was the RB14 in half PPR in just 13 games last year. He obviously had that suspension early in the year, but he didn't miss a step. He had 80 plus targets, 75 plus catches, and for the most part, this is going to be the same situation with Derek checkdowns, giving him just a bunch of stuff in the receiving game. Obviously, Kendre Miller is moving into year 2. He did show some upside and some flashes at the end of last year, especially in week 18. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be taking anything in the receiving game away from Alvin Kamara. I really like Kamara here at the 705. The only big change in this offense is that they do bring in Clint Kubiak now as their offensive coordinator. He comes from San Francisco, where he was the passing coordinator for Brock Purdy in that Niners offense last year. Obviously, Shanahan was calling the plays for the 49ers. He's their main play caller. But I think that a lot of the stuff that Kubiak does bring to the table is maybe just trying to clean up a lot of the stuff with Derek Carr in the passing game. Even if they can just be slightly improved as a better offense last year, more toward the mid area of total offenses in 2024, I think that we can see the touchdown upside and usage go up as well. Again, in the receiving game, aside from Chris Olave, it's only A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson still hurt, so he's going to be eating a lot more underneath and going to be eating a lot more in the receiving game as well. You're essentially getting a low-end RB1 at the price of a mid RB2, so really love Kamara here in the mid-7th. And the next guy is going to be Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones is currently going off the board as the RB19, ADP of 709. And going back, looking at his 2023 campaign, he obviously had the injury early in the year that kind of, led into the middle of the season. But the last 5 games, including the playoffs, his rushing totals were 127, 120, 111, 118, and 108. So after he returned from injury, he was running the ball than we've probably seen him do in his entire time in Green Bay. Then he was getting 20 plus carries per week with 100 plus rush yards each week as well. And he now goes to Minnesota. He goes to a division rival where they let go Alexander Mattison. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is long gone. So the only guy he's competing with now is Ty Chandler. And I think he could see similar usage, especially with Darnold and McCarthy there being the quarterbacks currently in that offense. Obviously, we saw McCarthy a lot of times last year just turn around and hand that ball off to Corum or Donovan Edwards. Now he could just turn around and hand it off to Aaron Jones. Also, we can expect Darnold to not be someone that's going to be throwing 25, 30 plus times per game consistently. So they could be relying on the ground game a lot, often and early, I think, here in the Kevin O'Connell-led offense. And this isn't even to mention that with Hawkinson still hurt, tore his ACL, he's going to be starting the year probably on IR. Also, Addison's situation up in the air with legal troubles last week. It could be an area where outside of Justin Jefferson, if Addison is to get suspended, who's going to be the next primary pass catcher in that offense? It could easily be Aaron Jones. So at RB19, he is definitely one of my favorite values in this pocket. The next guy is going to be Ramondre Stevenson, coming off the board at the RB20, ADP of 710, and he missed the back half of last year, but 2 years ago he was a top 12 guy in half PPR formats, and much of this was because of his pass catching upside. Now, they do let go Ezekiel Elliott, but they do bring in Antonio Gibson, who's pretty much known as this receiving back. He was a receiver at Memphis, turned running back into the later parts of his college career into Washington, but Washington had no problem letting him go and bringing in Austin Eckler, so it's tough to see how he's going to, at least eat into a large majority of Rhamondre Stevenson's early down workload, maybe some third down work, but Rhamondre Stevenson is a fantastic pass catcher as well. So I'm honestly higher on this Patriots offense than a lot of other people. I'm getting similar vibes to the Texans last year. Everyone didn't know who Tank Dell was. Oh, who's going to be Nico Collins? He hasn't been anything here early in his career. With a receiving room of Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, and Javon Baker, I honestly think if Drake May starts sooner than later, or even with Brissett early in the year, this offense could surprise some people. And I think a ground game is going to be a staple of this offense very early into the year. They just gave him the big contract extension. I think the offense is going to run through him. Here at the end of the 7th, you're getting a guy with consistent workload who does have the pass catching upside. I love Rhamondre Stevenson here in the late 7th. Now, the next guy on this list is going to be Najee Harris, coming off the board currently as the RB21, or right after Rhamondre Stevenson with the 711 here in ADP. And his reception upside has decreased over the past 3 seasons. Obviously, his rookie year, Ben was peppering him. His arm was cooked. He had 74 catches that year. In 2022, he had 41 catches. And now this past year, he had 29 catches. So from 74 down to 41 down to 29, his reception totals have been decreasing year over year. But in half PPR formats still, he's never finished outside of a top 20 guy, and he's now going as the RB21. Now, one of the biggest changes is that they bring over Arthur Smith here as the new offensive coordinator. He wasn't the best in terms of, really disheartening the fantasy community by not giving Bijan enough carries last year. But between him and Tyler Algier, they were running the ball at a very high clip. And even going back to the days with Tennessee, with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, their emphasis was a lot on the ground game. So honestly, I'm really high on this offense than a lot of other people. And maybe it's because my room is black and yellow. I'm a Steelers fan, been born and raised a Steelers fan. But I think this team should be a lot more competent on offense. We're now getting the past 2 years of Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky out of the way. We bring in Russell Wilson. We bring in Justin Fields, a new offensive coordinator who has a record of running the ball consistently. So I think a lot more scoring opportunities are going to come with this revamped offense. Not even to mention that Najee Harris has started his career now with 3 straight years of 1,000+ rush yards and 10+ rushing touchdowns. So he's done it consistently. He's done it over time. And this is without even mentioning how the Steelers' offensive line has now been improved. Currently, PFF's ranked number 9 offensive line. Took Broderick Jones in the 2023 draft. Now took Troy Fautanu here in the 2024 draft. So revamped offensive line with new offensive coordinator, new quarterbacks into town. I'm really high on Najee here at the late 7th. Now, the next guy on this list is going to be James Conner, currently going off the board as the RB24, the 804 in these drafts in terms of ADP. And he's a guy who had 1,000+ rush yards in 13 games last year. And the crazy thing is that once Kyler got back about midway year, it took some games for him to get going, but once he got rolling toward the back half of the year, James Conner had 7 touchdowns in the last 5 games in the Cardinals offense last year. His RB finishes over that span was RB5, RB11, RB4, RB4, and then RB1. So in those final 5 games, he had 7 touchdowns and never finished outside as a top 11 option at the running back position. Now, I know the big thing here is going to be that they took Trey Benson in round 3 of the 2024 draft. He was most people's RB1 or RB2 there with Jonathan Brooks here. But outside of Conner getting hurt, I'm not too worried about Trey Benson just coming in and taking a lot of that workload here, at least early into the year. A lot of these rookie running backs do tend to start popping off here in the later parts of the year. But I think at RB24, you're getting a guy who will no doubt return at this value, barring injury, which I know there is an argument for that for James Conner. He's pretty much guaranteed to at least miss 1 game. I know that's a big thing with him. But in terms of where you're getting him here in the early 8th, I love him at this price. Now, the next guy on the list is going to be Jaylen Warren, who's going off the board at the RB25, ADP of 805. And you can make a similar argument for Warren, just like with Najee, in terms of the new offensive coordinator, the new quarterbacks, the new offensive line. But outside of that, I believe that he's the opposite in terms of what Najee provides. So he never had a game last year with more than 50+ carries, but he does have the pass catching upside in this offense. Najee was not on the field in third downs. It was the Jaylen Warren show on third downs for the Steelers offense. 8 out of 17 games last year, he had 5 or more targets, and he ended up with the season having 61 receptions, which was 5th in the NFL. So if he could get similar usage in this receiving game, maybe a couple more touchdowns due to the positive regression of a better offense, better offensive line, better play caller, better quarterback play, I think here with the 805, he is definitely going to be a slam dunk here in your drafts. Now, the next guy is going to be DeAndre Swift, coming off the board as the RB26, currently with an ADP of 809. And it's kind of interesting because what we knew DeAndre Swift to be here, especially in his first few years in Detroit, it was a guy who was not very good between the tackles, was more of a pass catching prowess there with Jamal Williams. But in Philadelphia, this pretty much flipped. He hit 1,000 rush yards for the first time in his career, and he had a career low in receptions with only 39. So this just goes to show you that Jalen Hurts does not check the ball down as much as you probably hope for, and maybe that could be an argument as to, talking about some things with Saquon here in 2024. But Caleb Williams does have a lot of that out-of-pocket magic. He did a lot there at USC, but NFL could be a bit different. Maybe he's relying on checkdowns and relying on looking to the running back here early in his career, which is Swift's bread and butter. Not even to mention as a runner between the tackles, obviously he was running behind that great Eagles offensive line last year, but PFF currently has Chicago's offensive line ranked as the 11th OL this year. Could see Swift being very explosive here, especially if Caleb Williams is what we expect him to be here as a rookie. And his only competition is going to be Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, who neither have the explosiveness that Swift does have. So really like him here at the back half of your 8th round. And the last guy in this pocket is going to be Raheem Mostert, coming off the board as the RB28, currently going with an ADP of 810. And so bringing up the 21 total touchdowns kind of seems like low-hanging fruit, but honestly, I think in this offense, he does have 10 plus, double-digit plus upside in terms of touchdowns here in 2024. I do like Devon Achane this year, and I'm comfortable ripping him at the early 3rd, which is what his ADP currently is, but grabbing his counterpart here in the late 8th, I think is just crazy value. He was extremely efficient last year, and he was on the league's top scoring offense. Tua led the league in passing yards. I can expect in the Mike McDaniel offense, they're going to be very explosive once again, and you're going to want one of these running backs. You're going to either want Achane or you're going to want Mostert. And if you're passing on Achane, getting a receiver like Mike Evans, Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp in that range, you can just take Mostert here in the late 8th. So the only big thing to bring up here is that they did draft Jalen Wright in the 4th round in this past draft, who I'm not too worried about. I honestly don't think he's going to see more than 10 to 15% of snaps, if that, here over the season. Another reason I like him here is because of, I think Achane does have some injury concern. With that type of build, he was taken off the field sometimes when he was given the increased workload last year. And while that argument can be said the same for Raheem Mostert, he's been one known to miss a lot of games here in his career. That's already baked into the price. You're not having to spend a 3rd round pick on him. You're able to spend a late 8th round pick. So really love Raheem Mostert here to wrap up this pocket. So moving on to the last pocket, this one is going to be in the 11th round, and I like getting at least one from this group as well as my RB4, RB5. And so the wide receiver equivalents in this range are going to be A.D. Mitchell, Jerry Jeudy, and Mike Williams. So the running backs in this tier include Blake Corum, Ezekiel Elliott, Jerome Ford, and Austin Eckler. So we'll go ahead and start with Blake Corum, who's currently going off the board as the RB36, ADP of 1101. And he was the 3rd running back taken off the board this year, and the Rams invested a 3rd round pick into him and into the running back position. So obviously we know Kyren Williams was great last year. He did have the injury at that one point, and they had to sign Darrell Henderson back off the street. But I think now having a capable backup running back who was, statistically one of the best running backs that we've ever seen in college, it's just someone that you want to at least take some shots on here, especially in the 11th round. You want to own any running back in this McVay offense. Obviously, Kyren Williams last year, Darrell Henderson, Sony Michel even won me a league back in 2021. Cam Akers going back to the Todd Gurley days. It's always a piece of this offense you do want to own. I think with Matt Stafford, with McVay, this offense is again going to be toward the top half of scoring offenses in 2024. And you're swinging for upside here toward the late part of the draft. RB36. If something were to happen for Kyren Williams, I think Corum steps in as an immediate mid to low end RB2 with some high touchdown upside. Moving on to the next guy here in this pocket is going to be Ezekiel Elliott, coming off the board as the RB37, ADP of 1102. He was actually pretty inefficient, honestly, in terms of the back half of last year as a runner. But again, the Patriots offensive line is not as good as the Cowboys is right now. PFF currently has it ranked as their 10th ranked offensive line. And he also never finished lower than the RB20 under McCarthy there in his 3 years with Dallas from 2020 to 2022. He's obviously a lot older now than he was then, but instead of competing and getting snaps taken away with an ascending Tony Pollard, he's only having now to compete with Rico Dowdle, who I'm not completely sold on. So there's a lot of comparisons with Zeke right now to the Gus Edwards 2023 campaign, where he could be inefficient, but if he's giving you 8 to 10 or maybe 10 plus touchdown upside, he is absolutely worth ripping here at an RB37 price. Moving on to the next guy on this list, it's going to be Jerome Ford here, RB39 off the board with an ADP of 1107. With Kareem Hunt gone, and I was very shocked to see this, Kareem Hunt actually had 9 rushing touchdowns last year. So Jerome Ford was getting a lot of his bread and butter there in the receiving game, and Kareem Hunt was taking a lot of the goal line work, taking a lot of the rushing touchdown upside, and eating about 30% of snaps each and every game. So Kareem Hunt's not out of town. They did bring in D'Onta Foreman, who I'm not too worried about. He did have some stints with Chicago and again with Carolina 2 years ago where he was very efficient and effective for fantasy. But I think this just goes to show that I'm a little bit lower on Chubb than a lot of others are. I believe Chubb is expected to start training camp on the PUP list and then will most likely be placed on IR. So is at least going to be missing 4+ games to start this year. I think it could honestly leak into the mid area of this year. I don't think he's going to be playing, if at all, as a meaningful capacity in this Browns offense, at least till maybe week 10, 12. It's going to be way later in the year. So where you're going to get a guy who is going to be running behind one of the best O-lines in the league. Obviously, we know the Browns have had a great O-line, PFF's current ranked 4th O-line, and the pass catching upside is there for him. He had 60 targets last year in 2023. He was the RB17 in half PPR formats. He averaged 4 yards per carry, and he's now going off the board as the RB39. So I think a lot of this price is baked in that a lot of people are higher than Chubb. You're going to see the videos every now and then of him doing squats, of him doing deadlifts. But at the end of the day, that's not what the running back position consists of. You're going to have to be making cuts. You're going to have to be running with guys, behind guys that did not just suffer the same injury that you did. So really like Jerome Ford at this price with positive TD regression, maybe getting some of those that Kareem Hunt took last year. He's definitely going to return at this value. To wrap up this pocket is going to be Austin Ekeler, currently going off the board as the RB40, ADP of 1110. So if we look back even just to Kingsbury's days in Arizona, even James Conner with Kyler Murray, who obviously is a rushing quarterback, was still getting 5+ targets in pretty much every game he played more than 60% of snaps in. So now with Jaden Daniels under center, I'm going to be seeing a more up-tempo kind of West Coast style offense, more fast-paced, and I believe Brian Robinson's skill set doesn't really match the vision that maybe Cliff Kingsbury wants in this at all. So they let Gibson go. They bring in Austin Ekeler. So Ekeler has said time and time again that he felt the most healthy, the most juiced whenever there was someone alongside him kind of taking the early down work, the between the tackle work that is really not his skill set. So we go back and look at early days, obviously sharing the field with Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon was getting a lot of the early work. Austin Ekeler was more of that change of pace, kind of third down guy, receiving upside. And that could be what he can be in this offense as well. He said that he could pair very well with Brian Robinson's skill set, be more of the ground and pound guy. Ekeler comes in with a third down, 2-minute situations. So I think Ekeler is honestly going to return at this value. I mean, RB40, we're taking swings now with guys at the end of the 11th round that we've seen as recent ago as even last year, the year before, who can literally win you your week. And I know that clip, everyone loved to clown at it when he was running down the sideline last year and he was getting hawked. We all know the speed isn't going to be there, but again, that's not what we're going to be asking him to do in this Washington offense. He's not going to be a guy getting 15 to 20 carries between the tackles. He's going to be a guy who's getting a lot of receiving upside on the field when you want him, when the running back targets are going to be the most effective. So really like Austin Ekeler here at RB40. So that will conclude today's video, going through those different RB pockets. I hope this was helpful to you guys. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate you tuning in. If you're new to the Smash Accept channel, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, because aside from the Dynasty content that Dad and that Snoog are putting out that you guys love, we're going to be putting out some new things regarding the redraft side of things, these best ball drafts, looking at ADPs, looking at our favorite targets, looking at some content like this. Also going to be trying to go ahead and do an Underdog live stream here once a week till the season starts. Again, if you're new to Underdog Fantasy, you can use code SMASHACCEPT upon your first deposit and you'll get 50% deposit match back up to $250 with a minimum of a $10 deposit. And if you do want to access everything Smash Accept, including access to our Discord channel with about 300 plus members, talking shop, talking trades, talking fantasy, getting a first look at Dynasty Dad and Snoog's rankings, whether redraft, whether dynasty, trade values, position values. We're going to be in redraft soon, guys, so we're going to be entering some start-sit decisions, so you do have access to communicate with them at your pleasure. You can access that all for as little as $5 per month at patreon.com/smashaccept. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. That's going to do it for today, and we'll catch y'all next time.